Today I want to talk about my all-time favorite lure, the spinnerbait. Okay, so the spinnerbait, basically you have your head, which is usually made out of lead. It gives you your weight. You have a skirt, of course a hook. Then you have your wire frame. It's where you attach your line at. And you have your blade side of your frame, your wire form. And this is where your blades go. And that is the anatomy of a spinnerbait. Alright, so basically a spinnerbait is supposed to mimic a bait fish as it's going through the water. A lot of different options on spinnerbaits, what makes them really great. First off, your colors. If you're fishing clear water, you want to go with a lighter color. If you're fishing dark water, go with a darker color. As far as your blades go, there's three popular styles of blades. You have your willow blades, which is basically like a willow leaf. They're long and slender. These work better for clear water situations. They don't put much vibration in the water. They don't throw off as much light. On the opposite end of that spectrum is your Colorado blades. These are usually kind of short and fat. Now, these put a lot more thump in the water. Depending on the color, can attract a lot more light. The third blade that people use is the Indiana blade. It's kind of like in between both of them. And in those situations, I'll go with like this lure right here. It has a willow blade and a Colorado blade. Alright, now as far as your weight, a lot of people think that heavy weight is a bigger bait and for bigger fish, which could be, very far from the truth. Like this spinnerbait right here is a 1/2 ounce. Now I've caught tons of little dink bass on a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait. The main deal with the bigger weights is it's going to sink further into your water column. So if your fish are hanging low like in the middle of summertime, or the opposite of that in the wintertime when they're really deep, go with the bigger lure to get your lure down there where the fish are. And the opposite of that is go with the smaller one like a 1/4 ounce when they're in the shallow waters. But you can also run these in shallow water with just a faster retrieve. To make it easy on you, split right down the middle and get you a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait. That's the most common spinnerbait, and for that reason, because it's the best of both worlds. Now as far as your blade color, silver will be your best for clear water, and if it's stained water, you're better to go with gold. Now one of my favorite colors to use is copper. Copper is kind of in between the two. And then of course you have your painted blades like this one has on it right here. But it just depends on what you're going for. It's just adding flash. A lot of people want to put trailer hooks on spinnerbaits. I never use a trailer hook. By design, spinnerbaits are essentially weedless. They're going through the water like this with the blade out. So you hit any kind of structure, your hook's going to be up. The only way to really hang up a spinnerbait is to throw into a really bad branch tree, and then you get caught up as soon as you first try to retrieve it. A lot of people want to put a trailer hook on because they say bass will short strike it. What they're striking at is your blades here, the blades in the body of your lure. Now some lures will have this arm, the blade arm will be too long, and it'll put the blade way out here as it's going through the water. I try to build my spinnerbaits, I try to get the blades pretty even with the end of the bait itself. Like this one might be a hair bit long, so you kind of want your blades to be even with your hook here. That way when a bass comes to get it, even if he's striking at the blades, he's going to get that hook. Now if you got a really long blade way out here, that bass is going to strike that blade and he's going to miss your hook. So if your blade is pretty close to the bottom of your skirt, I don't think you need a trailer hook. That's my opinion. like I said, this is my favorite lure. I always have a spinnerbait tied on one of my rods, and I hardly ever miss bass. You know, maybe part of that is, you know, my lures that I make, I keep them even with my blades. Well, maybe not, I don't know, maybe I've just been getting lucky. But I don't like trailer hooks. You put a trailer hook on there, you're gonna get hung up a lot more. You're taking away the weedless property that this bait has. Now let's go fishing with a spinnerbait. My favorite way to fish a spinnerbait is to work structure. Most places I fish are full of cypress trees and cypress knees. So what I do is I throw my spinnerbait, I try to hit the tree, and then bounce it off into the water. What this does, a lot of times bass will sit right up at these trees and they'll watch it, waiting on bugs or lizards or whatever to fall out of the trees. So if you can get to where you can hit that tree, and that sound will get the bass's attention. As soon as it hits the water, a lot of times the bass will automatically strike it. A lot of times I also like to throw past some structure. Like say if there's a cypress knee sticking up in the water by itself, I'll throw past it and then reel in, and then I'll try to make that spinnerbait actually bump that cypress knee or whatever piece of structure it is to get the bass's attention. My rule of thumb with using a spinnerbait is generally when you're retrieving, I try to get the bait deep enough in the water to where I can just make out the blades flickering through the water. Bass isn't the only species that likes spinnerbaits. I catch drum, warmouth, the occasional bluegill, and several crappie on spinnerbaits. It just so happens the crappie in this video right now I'm catching ended up being my personal best white crappie, 1.5 pounds. Now I could easily make this video twice as long talking about spinnerbaits. It never fails me, I always seem to catch bass on spinnerbaits. I hope this video's answered some questions you might have about spinnerbaits, or maybe you tried spinnerbaits before in the past and kind of hung it up because you didn't have any luck. I urge you to try it again. Don't give up on the spinnerbait. It's a great lure, and I think everybody needs to add this bait to their arsenal.
Lazy yellow moon